Just as I wasn't prepared for the depths of despair some patients would exhibit when I started doing Social Security disability exams, I wasn't prepared for the thermonuclear rage some patients would express. Hello, I'm John Foster, and I'm a medical doctor who does Social Security disability exams. And today I'm going to talk about disability and rage. This video will primarily be directed towards doctors who do Social Security disability exams. But before I get started, I just watched a very interesting video on working while applying for Social Security disability. The video was made by a lawyer named Jonathan Ginsberg, and he has a channel called Social Security Disability Videos. I've been watching his videos for several years now, and I've learned a lot about Social Security rules and regulations. And if you're applying for Social Security disability, I suggest that you subscribe to his channel and watch his videos. I'm going to leave a link in the description below to this video. Now, as usual, everything I say is based on my own experience and learning, and not the opinions of the Social Security Administration or any other medical body. I would also like to add that some patients may find what I have to say today unpleasant or unkind. I can only say that this is the truth as far as I know it, and I certainly could be wrong in certain aspects. Now, to begin with, I need to define rage outbursts. And first, I'm going to talk about two things that are not rage. The first is normal grumpiness or grouchiness, which all doctors have experienced in patients many times. Being sick or injured is no picnic. There's often pain, other unpleasant symptoms like shortness of breath, and one's activities are limited. And this is enough to put anybody in a bad mood. It's difficult to be cheerful and optimistic when you're suffering from chronic pain. The second is malingering. As I've stated in previous videos, malingerers are on the psychopathic spectrum. They are deliberately and consciously lying and pretending in order to get money and not have to work. These people use others instrumentally. They do whatever is necessary to get what they want. They tend to be manipulative. They can use threats, both implied and outright, to get what they want. And if they really want something from you, and the only way to do that is to stab you in the back, they'll do that without a qualm. But they are not full of rage. They are smooth operators. The people who exhibit rage are patients with functional illnesses. Functional illness has to be the most neglected common ailment in medicine. A neurologist named John Stone, who's done groundbreaking work on treatment and help for patients with functional illness, has said that 1/3 of his patients in a general neurology clinic suffer from functional illness. That's astonishing. When I trained in medicine, I was not trained at all about functional illness, and there's almost no medical literature on it except in psychiatry, where psychiatrists are tasked with determining if someone who's been accused of a serious crime is legally insane or not. Imagine if there was any other illness responsible for 30% of patients presenting to a clinic, and nobody wrote anything about it, lectured on it, or even wanted to talk about it. It seems to be a dirty little medical secret in the minds of many physicians. As I've mentioned before, I believe that functional illness is a positive diagnosis. It's not simply the absence of physical or laboratory findings. in a patient with medical complaints, and that the diagnosis of functional illness can be of great assistance to the patient, particularly in avoiding iatrogenic harm, such as unnecessary surgeries. Now, here are some of my own ideas. I believe that everyone has more than one personality living in their head. For example, we've all experienced making a decision to either do something or not do something, and then in the same day we find ourselves doing what we promised ourselves we would not, or not doing what we promised ourselves we would. Dieting is a good example. How many people who make a resolution to diet follow it strictly? And why do you do something that you've decided you won't do and really want not to do? It's because there's at least two personalities fighting over control of you. I first came to this realization when I began treating patients with schizophrenia. It seemed to me that they had a sane part of their personality that wanted them to remain rational. That personality would have them take their medicine and go to their clinic visits. They also had an insane personality, and the two would fight for control. The insane personality would encourage the person to stop taking their antipsychotic medication, stop going to the clinic, and often take psychotomimetic drugs such as LSD. I believe that functional patients have one part of their personality which holds the delusion that they are ill or injured and disabled, and another part of the personality which may be conscious or even subconscious that realizes that actually they are not as badly off as they act or claim. And I believe that that's the major generator for the sort of rage that I see in some disability patients. Now, it took me some time to realize that I'd seen the same sort of rage in many patients in the past. The rage is identical to the rage I would see when I did emergency medicine, when prescription drug addicts would present, try to convince me that they had a serious illness or injury that was painful, and con me into writing them a prescription. When I said that they wouldn't, many of them flew into a rage, uncontrolled. There's a name for that. It's narcissistic rage, and basically what it is an adult throwing a temper tantrum. Infancy is the ultimate narcissistic state. The infant is the center of its universe, and everyone else exists to serve it. No one gets angry or complains when an infant cries at 3 a.m. because it's hungry or its diaper is dirty. Actually, there are a few people who complain or get angry, and we call them child abusers. Between the ages of 1 and 5, the child learns the harsh lesson that it is not the center of the universe, and that although other people care for it, they will not do anything at any time for it. Most children adjust to this well and decide that they want to become big people, like the adults, and become independent. The constant refrain of a 3 or 4-year-old is, no, I can do that myself. And your typical 3 or 4-year-old is extremely proud when they learn a new skill, such as buttoning a shirt or preparing a bowl of cereal. They also learn the word no, and that it means they don't always get what they want when they want it. And they tend to experiment with using this word for their parents or siblings. And this process of growth, maturity, and maturation continues through the childhood and adolescent years until the person becomes an independently functioning adult. In many functional patients, there's an arrest in this developmental process, and they remain in a dependent state. They often find a partner who infantilizes them, treats them as though they're hopeless and helpless and needs everything done for them. This means that a disability exam is a setup to enrage these patients, because the doctor in the disability exam is trying to find out what the patient can do, the limits of their capabilities, not what they can't do. And the doctor needs proof during the physical exam. I've had many functional patients tell me that they couldn't do something or other, and when I asked them to at least attempt it during the physical exam, they would refuse and act as though I was insulting them. And indeed, the outbursts of rage tend to be precipitated during the physical exam, when I try to get patients to do something and they simply will not. So here are some things I've learned that seem to help in dealing with these outbursts. The first is to realize that it's not personal. The patients aren't actually angry at the doctor. They're angry at the system which wants to determine what they actually can and cannot do, instead of what they claim that they can't do. The second thing is a mnemonic, JADE, J-A-D-E. And I say, don't jade with the patient. JADE stands for justify, argue, defend, and explain. Similarly to prescription drug addicts, these folks want to lure the physician into an argument or justification for the exam, and that I've found that's always a mistake. Keep in mind, you're in charge. You're doing your job. If the patient refuses to cooperate, that's their option. However, if a patient refuses to cooperate, your exam will not be worth much, and you may want to offer the patient the opportunity to leave and reschedule for an exam with another doctor. I don't do that frequently, but I've done it more than once. The second is, don't try to cajole or pester the patient to try harder or cooperate more with the exam. I used to do that, and all that did was escalate the tension. I never got a patient to try harder or make more of an effort. That leads me to my next point, which is simply be honest in your report. If a patient doesn't try or make a sincere effort, then you cannot judge how well they could or could not have done what you asked them to do. I indicate that in my report, and I avoid pejorative language. Instead of saying the patient made a poor effort in upper extremity strength testing, I put could not assess upper extremity strength due to low effort. If you find them, be sure to include positive signs of functional illness in your report and indicate that they're signs of functional illness. Keep in mind, I recommend against making the diagnosis of functional illness unless there's at least 3 positive signs, and even better if more. Finally, I think one of the reasons why this subject is so avoided by physicians is the notion that one is harming the patient by making the correct diagnosis, that they're suffering from a functional illness. And again, I think that's a misapprehension. Dr. John Stone is doing groundbreaking research on treating patients with functional illness, and I'm going to include a link to one of his videos below. Well, I hope that's been helpful, and as always, remember, if it happens, it's possible.